Picture this. You are standing in a vast, windswept valley. The grass is dry, the air is sharp, and it is 50,000 years before right now. You are exhausted. Your shoulders ache, your lungs are burning, and your hands are covered in dirt and dark red blood. But you are smiling, because right at your feet lies a massive 2-ton steppe bison. The hunt is over. The adrenaline is finally draining out of your system, leaving that heavy, floating feeling in your legs. You and 3 other hunters have just done the impossible. With nothing but wooden spears, flint tips, and your own lungs, you have run down a creature the size of a modern minivan. You did it. The tribe is going to eat tonight. You are a hero. So, what happens next? In the popular imagination, the cartoon version of history we all carry in our heads, the answer is simple. You drag the beast back to a roaring campfire. Everyone cheers. You, being the alpha hunter who landed the killing blow, take your flint knife, carve out the biggest, juiciest prehistoric filet mignon, and bite into it, while the rest of the cavemen wait their turn to grab a leg. It is a primitive, chaotic buffet. The strong take what they want, the weak get the scraps, and everybody goes to sleep happy. But here is the question nobody actually asks. How exactly do you divide 2,000 pounds of dead muscle among 40 hungry people without someone getting a rock to the back of the head? Not as in, how do you physically cut it? Obviously, you use stones and leverage. We are not talking about butchery. We are talking about math. We are talking about politics. If there is one thing humans are spectacularly bad at, it is sharing high-value resources without a system. You know this. You have seen people argue over who ordered the extra sides when the check comes at a restaurant. Now, multiply that tension by 1,000, remove the police, remove the supermarket, and add the fact that if you don't get enough calories this week, your children will literally die. What if I told you that the ancient campfire was not a free-for-all, nor was it a utopian commune of equal sharing? What if a distribution of that bison was actually governed by a system of rules so strict, so complex, and so psychologically advanced that it makes the modern tax code look like child's play? And this is the rabbit hole we are going down today. Buckle up, because this is about to get weird. The evidence for how our ancestors handled their food completely shatters the myth of the selfish caveman, but it also reveals a terrifyingly cold logic to our survival. Let's start at the very beginning. The beast is dead on the grass. Who gets the first piece? Let's start with the most obvious assumption. The guy who threw the spear, the hero of the day, gets the best cut, right? He earned it. Okay, that is settled. Now forget everything I just said, because that is entirely wrong. Let me introduce you to one of the most brilliant, mind-bending social mechanisms ever discovered by anthropology. Back in the 1960s, an anthropologist named Richard Lee was living with the San people in the Kalahari Desert. The San are hunter-gatherers. For tens of thousands of years, they have survived in one of the most unforgiving environments on Earth, using methods that echo our deepest human past. Lee wanted to say thank you to the tribe for hosting him, so for Christmas, he went out and bought the biggest, fattest, most magnificent ox he could find. He brought it back to the camp, expecting them to be thrilled. Instead, the tribesmen looked at this massive mountain of premium beef and they started complaining. They told Lee the ox was skinny. They said it was a bag of bones. They said it was so old and tough that it would ruin their teeth, and they openly wondered why he would insult them with such a pathetic animal. Lee was devastated. He thought he had been scammed by the seller. But when they slaughtered the ox, it was covered in thick layers of fat. It was a perfect animal. The feast was incredible. So why did they lie to his face? When Lee finally asked a wise elder what that was all about, the elder explained something that fundamentally changes how you understand human nature. He told Lee that when a young man brings in a great kill, he naturally comes to think of himself as a big chief. He thinks he is better than the rest. And arrogance, in a world where everyone depends on everyone else, is poison. Arrogance leads to one man trying to dominate the others. Eventually, that man will commit murder to keep his power. So, the tribe has a strict rule: insulting the meat. When a hunter makes a great kill, the community relentlessly roasts him. They complain about the size. They mock his aim. They act like he brought home a dead rat. And the hunter is expected to agree. He must sit quietly and apologize for his terrible hunting skills, even as everyone is actively gorging on his catch. They cool his heart. They enforce humility. But it goes even deeper than psychological leveling, and here is the fact that breaks my brain every single time I think about it. Who actually owns the dead animal? You would say the man who shot it, but among many indigenous groups, like the Juhawansi San, the meat belongs to the owner of the arrow. Let that land for a second. You could be the most athletic, eagle-eyed hunter in the valley. You track a giraffe for 3 days, you crawl through the brush, you draw your bow, and you make a perfect, lethal shot. But earlier that morning, you borrowed an arrow from an elderly, half-blind man back at camp who sits around making weapons all day. Because you used his arrow, he owns the kill. He is the one who decides how the meat is divided. He is the one who distributes the prime cuts. You, the athletic hero who did all the sweating and bleeding, might be the last one to get a piece. And you only get what the old man hands you. Sounds familiar, right? It is basically capitalism, but flipped on its head to protect the vulnerable. The toolmaker gets the equity. But this isn't just about fairness, this is a survival strategy. If the meat belonged only to the strong, the young hunters would hold all the power. The elders, the pregnant women, the sick, they would starve. By separating the physical act of killing from the ownership of the meat, ancient humans created a welfare state out of wood and flint. You'll say, well, that's just one tribe in the Kalahari. Okay, then explain why we see variations of this exact same strict distribution math all over the ancient world. So here is where the story takes a sharp turn. Let's look at the actual meat. What were they dividing? If you go to a modern steakhouse, the most expensive item on the menu is a lean, tender cut of meat. A filet mignon. 0 fat, pure protein. And modern paleo diet influencers will tell you that our ancestors roamed the plains, eating lean protein all day to stay incredibly shredded. Honestly, that is one of the most epically wrong takes in the history of human thought. If you handed an Ice Age hunter a skinless chicken breast or a lean filet mignon, they would probably throw it to the dogs. Lean meat in the ancient world was garbage. There is a biological phenomenon known as rabbit starvation or protein poisoning. If you eat nothing but very lean meat, like rabbit, you will digest the protein, but the process of breaking down that much pure protein without fat or carbohydrates overworks your liver. Your body actually spends more energy digesting it than it gets out of it. You can eat 10 pounds of lean rabbit meat a day and your stomach will be bulging, but you will slowly, agonizingly starve to death. To an ancient human, fat was God. Fat was energy. Fat was the difference between surviving the winter and freezing to death in a cave. When anthropologists and zooarchaeologists look at the bones left behind at ancient sites, like Kesem Cave in Israel, which is roughly 400,000 years old, they find something fascinating. The early humans there didn't just drag whole animals back. They selectively brought back the parts that contained the most fat and the richest calories. And the ultimate prize? The caviar of the Pleistocene, bone marrow and brains. Our ancestors would drag heavy leg bones for miles back to the camp, set them on a stone anvil, and smash them open with incredible precision just to scrape out the raw marrow. This means the division of the animal wasn't just slicing a carcass into equal chunks. It was a highly political hierarchy of organs. The division of the fat was a map of power and social debt. Who gets the marrow? The chief? The pregnant women building new human brains in their wombs? The elder who made the spears? The hunter might get the lean shoulder meat, the stuff that barely keeps you alive. The prize went to the network. And this brings us to the core of the ancient ledger. Why share at all? If you are a strong, capable hunter, why put up with the insults? Why give your precious, life-saving bone marrow to the old man who just sat by the fire? Why not just take your meat, go into the woods, and eat it yourself? Let me throw you a piece of evolutionary math. Hunting is a casino. It is an incredibly high-variance activity. You can be the greatest spear thrower on Earth, but animals are unpredictable. The wind changes, a twig snaps, the herd moves. Studies on modern foraging societies show that a hunter comes back empty-handed on a staggering percentage of his trips. Sometimes they catch nothing for a week, sometimes 2. If you live alone and you catch nothing for 2 weeks, you don't learn a valuable lesson. you die. But say you hit the jackpot, you kill a horse, you now have 500 pounds of meat. You cannot eat 500 pounds of meat before it rots in the sun or attracts a pack of dire wolves that will tear you to pieces. You have a massive, expiring surplus and zero storage. What do? You store your surplus meat in the stomachs of your friends. Evolutionary biologists call this reciprocal altruism. When anthropologists study this, they sometimes use a term that sounds almost funny: tolerated theft or demand sharing. You don't just politely offer a piece of meat to your neighbor walks up and demands it, and you give it to them. Because when you hand a massive chunk of fat to the family in the cave next to yours, you are not just being a nice guy, you are writing a contract in blood and fat. You are buying an insurance policy. You give them half your kill today, knowing that next month, when you sprain your ankle on the ice and can't hunt, and your children are crying from hunger, that neighbor is going to kill a deer, and they will owe you. This is the very foundation of human society. Before there was money, before there was agriculture, before there were kings or laws, there was the memory of meat. Our brains literally evolved to track these debts. Have you ever wondered why you can forget a math formula you studied for 3 weeks, but you perfectly remember that your coworker still owes you $20 from lunch 6 months ago? Your brain is a supercomputer designed to detect free riders in the social contract. Because 50,000 years ago, forgetting who owed you meat meant death. So far, this sounds almost beautiful. A perfect system of mutual support, where the strong feed the weak. Arrogance is punished, and everyone is covered by the social safety net. But here is the part we don't like to talk about. And now I have to tell you the other side of this. This is where it stops being a clever evolutionary trick and where the temperature drops. What happens when the casino goes completely cold? Imagine it is the middle of a brutal winter. The migration routes have shifted. The snow is too deep. The hunters go out day after day and come back with nothing. The entire camp is starving. The fat reserves are gone. The children have stopped running around. They just lie by the fire, their eyes hollow, too weak to even cry. Finally, by some miracle, a small group of hunters manages to trap a single sickly deer. It is a fraction of what they need. It is maybe 20 pounds of usable meat. There are 40 people in the clan. The math of reciprocal altruism only works when there is a surplus. It only works when the system can balance out over time. But when absolute scarcity hits, the rules of sharing suddenly flip. They stop being rules of inclusion and they become rules of exclusion. Anthropologists Kim Hill and A. Magdalena Hurtado spent years studying the Ache people, a foraging society in the dense forests of Paraguay. And what they documented about how humans act on the absolute edge of starvation is chilling. In times of extreme stress, the meat does not go to the weakest, it goes to the most valuable. The hunters who can still walk must eat, because if they starve, no one will ever hunt again. The young women of childbearing age must eat, because without them, the tribe has no future. The older children must eat, because the tribe has already invested years of calories into keeping them alive. So who gets cut off? The orphans, the injured, the elderly. When there is not enough to go around, the ancient welfare state shuts down. The old man who made the arrows? If he is too weak to walk, and the tribe needs to move to find food, they do not carry him, they leave him behind. It is a practice documented in many nomadic societies facing extreme environments. Senilicide, leaving the elderly or the sick sitting under a tree, sometimes with a small gourd of water, as the rest of the tribe walks away into the fog, never looking back. Sit with that for a second. You are a father, or a mother, or a child. You are looking at the person who raised you, the person who fed you from their own kills decades ago. And you both know the math. You both know that if you share this small piece of meat with them, neither of you will have the strength to make the trek tomorrow. The tribe is not a collection of individuals. The tribe is a single organism. And when an organism is freezing to death, it cuts off circulation to the fingers and toes to save the heart. The weak were not fed last out of malice or cruelty. They were cut off out of an agonizing, terrifying pragmatism. The survival of the clan was absolute. An individual life was finite, but the tribe had to live forever. There are archaeological sites that show the healed bones of early humans. people who had broken their femurs and were clearly fed and protected for months while they healed. We love to point to those bones as the birth of human compassion, and they are. But for every healed bone we find, we must ask ourselves about the bones we don't find. The people who got injured in the wrong month. The people who got sick during a drought. The ones who looked up at their family around the fire, saw the size of the kill, and silently understood that tomorrow they would not be traveling with them. And honestly, this is the part that makes my chest tight. Because we judge them from our comfortable, heated rooms. We call it savage. But the honest answer is, we don't know what we would do. Science can describe the mechanism of starvation, but it cannot crawl inside the experience of a father walking away from his own parent to save his child. This is the dark coin of human cooperation. The exact same mechanism that makes us the most empathetic, sharing, cooperative species on the planet is deeply tied to a cold calculus of utility. And yet, do not let the darkness of that truth cancel out the beauty of what it built, because here is the resolution. Everything we just looked at, the complex rules of arrow ownership, the insults to keep egos in check, the agonizing triage in the winter snow, it all points to one massive realization. We did not survive the ancient world because we were naturally angels, and we did not survive because we were ruthless demons. We survived because we were accountants of human life. Out of that brutal, desperate math of the Ice Age, something completely miraculous emerged. By keeping track of who owed who a piece of mammoth fat, we developed the concept of fairness. By realizing that we needed each other to survive the casino of the hunt, we developed the capacity for deep, enduring trust. The social contract wasn't written by philosophers in powdered wigs in the 18th century. It was written by starving hunters huddled around a bleeding carcass, figuring out how to keep as many people alive as possible. Over thousands of years, as we invented agriculture and cities and technology, our surplus grew. We no longer had to rely on the daily roulette of the spear. We built silos. We built refrigerators. And as our surplus grew, the boundary of our empathy expanded. We took that ancient system of reciprocal altruism, that localized, desperate insurance policy, and we stretched it. We started taking care of the sick not just when we could afford it, but as a moral imperative. We built hospitals and orphanages and social safety nets, trying to ensure that nobody ever has to be left under a tree again. The darkness of our past doesn't invalidate our modern morality. It makes it a triumph. The fact that we evolved from a world where leaving the weak behind was a mathematical necessity into a world where we actively spend billions of dollars to protect the vulnerable, that is the most astonishing achievement in the known universe. We took the cold math of survival, and over 50,000 years, we slowly turned it into grace. Which brings us all the way back to you. It is a Friday night. You are sitting at a brightly lit table with 3 of your friends. The music is loud, the room is warm, and there are no direwolves waiting outside the door. You have no mortgage on your cave, and you have no Sunday night existential dread about a migrating herd. The waiter walks over and drops a small leather folder on the table, the bill for the pizza and the drinks. For a second, nobody moves. And then you reach out, grab the folder, and say, "Don't worry about it. I'll get this one. You guys can get the next one." Your friends smile, say thank you, and the conversation flows on. It is the most ordinary, forgettable moment in the modern world. But right now, look at that moment through completely different eyes. It is the same exact ritual. You are sitting by the fire. You are dividing the surplus calories. You are telling the tribe that you are successful enough to provide, but you are instantly binding them to you with a tiny, invisible thread of debt. You get the next one. You are securing your future. You are building the network. You are doing exactly what kept your ancestors alive in the freezing dark hundreds of thousands of years ago. The mammoth is gone. The flint spears are buried in the dust. But the math of the human heart hasn't changed a single bit. If you are going out to eat this weekend, pay attention to who reaches for the bill. And tell me in the comments, do you think we ever truly do something for nothing? Or is the ancient ledger still running in the back of our minds? I read these. If you love looking at the ordinary world and finding the ancient abyss hiding right beneath it, hit subscribe. We have a lot more rabbit holes to go down together. Stay curious and take care of your tribe.